Welcome. I'm so happy to have you all here. This is so exciting. This is the final event for the Film Interchange 2015 fall season. Filmmakers defining your path, inspiring filmmakers to do more. And I know, booze, because that's really sad. I know, it's been such a great season. And we've had such a blast right here in this room at Livestream Public, which has been the most incredibly gracious host. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank Livestream Public and Livestream.com for being incredible. Yeah, thank you. So furthermore, for those of you who are here for the first time at Film Interchange, we do a spring and a fall season right here in New York at Livestream Public. And it is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And what I very much want to do is to make sure that filmmakers get their films from concept to screen. It is something I'm extremely passionate about because it's a long game. Filmmaking is it's a roller coaster ride, and it's years in the making, and you really need a strong support system and knowledge and friends who are all doing it along with you, and that's what this is all about. So we bring in thought leaders, people who have created a great amount of expertise or have a great amount of expertise in the film space to come in and chat with you as to how they did that. And many of our thought leaders are here in this room. Can you raise your hand if you've been a Film Interchange thought leader in the past and the future? Yes. Woohoo! Raise your hand. Jason, get your hand up. Jason, that was the worst hand raise I've ever seen. Okay. He's like, I'm in the back of the room. Thank you. All right. Awesome. And then, of course, many of their esteemed guests are here as well. So tonight we have an awesome person who's going to come up and do our keynote address. That means that I am going to leave the stage and I'm not going to come back. So get a really good look at this face, people. Okay. Adam Leipzig is just the most incredible person, and I was introduced to him through Emily Best, who is the CEO of seedandspark.com. Let's have a shout out to Seed and Spark. Yes. Adam is one of her advisors on her board, and so I just said, Emily, can you make an intro? And that's how this magical evening started. That's how it started. So Adam is a really interesting person. He has a 360-degree view of the business because he's worn almost every hat. And with that said, he is the former executive vice president of Walt Disney Studios, the former president of National Geographic. He currently is the CEO of Entertainment Media Partners. He has been responsible for over 30 films that have disrupted expectations, including March of the Penguins, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Dead Poets Society, and countless others. He also has two books, right at the moment, that are out. You should get both of them for sure, and they are on display on the front. What is that, podium? Let's call it a podium. It's a podium. So if you want to go check it out. So the first one is Inside Track for Independent Filmmakers, and the second one is Filmmaking in Action. They are two books that you should definitely check out if you ever want to make a film at all, ever. And from there, he also is doing a number of documentaries, and you can talk to him about those documentaries as you mingle after this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Adam Leipzig.
Hey everyone, thank you, Jen. Thank you, everybody. It's just great to be here, and it's kind of an honor to be here as the as the last person in the series. To get a sense of who you all are, just show of hands, how many people in the house are producers? How many are directors? How many are actors? Casting people? Other production people? Post-production people? Writers? Excellent. Voiceover artists? Animators? Graphics geniuses? How many people have already made their first movie? How many people have a film in production now? Okay. Fabulous to meet you all. And for those of you who have films in production now, thanks for coming out. I know I know how crazy busy you are because really you're going to be shooting at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, so why are you here now? Jen just talked about the idea of going from concept to screen. And I think that's that's the governing idea of everything that you've been doing here in the series, and that'll be the governing idea of what we talk about today. Many of you wrote burning questions on Post-it notes. One of the things that you learn in production is that you have a plan, but then the plan doesn't work and you need a backup plan, and then that backup plan doesn't work and then you have to figure out what to do. So what we're going to do today is I did not prepare a specific talk. What I want to do is have a conversation with you and really address the questions that you have. And we put them on sticky notes so we could sort of put them into some kind of a little narrative order, starting from concept over here to getting on screen over here, and then some career stuff over here. So that's how we're going to flow. As you figure out the idea of concept and getting to screen is another way of saying, how do I put my movie together, including how do I get the money for my movie? And then after you've made your movie, how do you get it onto screens? How do you get it distributed in some meaningful way? So that's another way for us to frame up the conversation today. We're going to start over here. What advice do you give to a writer who is stuck? Now, earlier today, I was at the offices of Macmillan Learning with two people who were in the front row. My publisher, Eric Gutierrez here, and my editor, Catherine Burgess, and they said, "When's your proposal for the next book coming?" And I think that they accused me of, in the nicest possible way, of being a writer who's stuck. So I really relate to this question. One of the things that we understand as creative people is that we don't have a 9-to-5 job, and we don't work consistently, nor do we work consistent hours. Now, yes, I do actually know a couple of writers who every morning get up, sit down at the word processor, and put in their 4 hours, and then go away. But I know many more writers who don't work that way, who find that that just isn't, the muse does not hover over them in a consistent way. My experience is that creative people work in waves and spurts, that we work in periods of incredibly high energy. Arthur Miller said that he wrote Death of a Salesman in 3 days. Now, he really wrote it over 30 years because he experienced life over 30 years, and in some anterior lobe of his brain was thinking about it for 30 years without even coming into any formed thought, but he sat down and wrote it in 3 days. So part of being stuck as a writer, my experience, is to give yourself permission to be stuck and understand that it's okay, that the muse will come back, and when she comes back, you have to honor her, because if you don't honor her at that moment, she will go away again. The other thing about writing is that you have to lower your expectations. I think that the biggest solution for writer's block is to lower your expectations and feel very comfortable writing a shitty first draft. Just get it out there. It can be as bad as possible. It doesn't matter how bad it is, you just have to get it out, because then once you get it out, you're into rewriting. Rewriting is much better, it's much easier, and you have a great sense of relief. Early in my career, I worked on a film called Billy Bathgate, which was based on E.L. Doctorow's book, Billy Bathgate. And Edgar actually wrote the first draft of the script, which was then revised by Tom Stoppard, who has credit on the movie. And when I was talking with him, with Edgar, about how he wrote these really long books, and I was a kid at that point, I was really curious about his process. I said, how do you do that? You write these incredibly long, complicated books. What do you do? And he said, I never read what I wrote the day before. And I never go back and read the book until I've gotten all the way through it, because if I do, it's going to stop me, and I'll just keep rewriting and rewriting and rewriting chapter 1, and I'm never going to get to chapter 2. I go all the way through. So I don't know if that helps you writers, but that's what he told me. It's actually what I've done in my books, is that I just keep going through a chapter. I never go back, because if I go back, I get stuck. What is the first thing one should prioritize or focus on when producing a project? You should focus on, why is anyone going to give a shit about your movie? You should focus on, who's your audience? Who's your tribe? let's look at the kind of awful, devastating numbers for independent film. There are, by my estimate, about 10,000 independent films produced in the United States alone every year. There are about 650 or 700 films that get a theatrical release every year, and maybe another 1,000 that get some kind of digital distribution. Now, of those films that are theatrically released, about 150 are studio movies. The other 500 or so are independent films. The studio films get about 92% of the total box office. The 500 independent films are fighting tooth and nail for the other 8, maybe in a good year, 10% of the box office. And of those, a few of them will get the lion's share of that 8%, and the rest will make $5,000, $25,000, $100,000. They really won't make a mark at all. It's so hard to get people motivated to go see a movie, or it's so hard to get people to just watch a movie on Netflix. You really have to think about who is your audience and what's the value you're offering your audience. What's going to make your movie stand out from everything else that there is to do? And a good truth test for any kind of film or video project is, first, do you know who your audience is? And if you tell me everybody, you don't really know who your audience is. Because if your audience was everybody, you'd be making a $250 million Marvel Comics tentpole movie. Those really are for everybody. But the movies that we make are not for everybody. The movies that we make are for very specific niches and tribes, which is fabulous because you can know your tribe. For example, there was a movie that came out earlier this year that was called Awake, the Life of Yogananda, about the Indian guru who brought yoga to America and around the world. Did anybody see that movie? Okay, so a few people here saw that movie, and that's a perfect example. That movie did incredibly well for an independent movie. It made more than $1 million in theatrical, and it's going to do very well in the digital universe. Why? Because you can figure out who that tribe is. They went into every yoga Facebook group. They went to every yoga studio. And that's a great example also that our tribes are not the traditional tribes that studios look at, which are demographic tribes. You may have heard of studios talk about 4-quadrant movies. Have people heard that term? Okay, so who hasn't heard the term? Anytime I use a term that you haven't heard, you got to stop me. All right, so in the movie business, we think about like this big studio movie business, they think about the movie very simplistically as a pie with 4 quarters. And 1 quarter is men, and men over 25, men under 25, women over 25, women under 25. 4 quadrants. And some movies might be one quadrant movies, but a movie that appeals to everybody is called a 4-quadrant movie. It means everybody goes. But the movies that we make aren't even one quadrant. They're a tiny slice of a pie, and that's okay. It could be a great pie slice. So a movie about Yogananda was just a great pie slice, and it didn't fit a demographic of men or women or over 25, under 25. It didn't matter whether you were white or black or Latino or Asian. What it mattered was you were interested in yoga. Yoga is a psychographic idea. It cuts across all these traditional and really outdated demographic ideas. When we think about the tribe that you have to focus on, think about how small you can make your niche. Because the smaller you can make your niche, the more specifically you can go reach out to your tribe. How many people have Spotify? Okay, Spotify has broken down music into 744 categories. Because they have 744 categories, they can really niche it down and give you Norwegian death metal and give you, 1970s pop country and be very specific in their recommendation engine. Netflix has a recommendation engine that is 96% effective. In other words, 96% of the things that people watch on Netflix are because Netflix recommended it to them. Netflix has a very granular understanding of who we are and what we like because they analyze over 80 billion real-time data events every day. Every time we click on something, look at it, read it, decide to look at it for 5 minutes, decide to go on to something else. Netflix has more than 70,000 categories of movies, which allow them to be incredibly granular in their designation of who the audience for a particular movie is. That's what we have to do too. We have to be incredibly granular because if we can be that granular, we can actually meet our audience and market to them or share the word with them. Why? Because we don't have a $100 million budget for marketing. We don't even have $1 million for marketing. We might have $10,000 to market our movie. We have to spend our money incredibly wisely. Otherwise, it's not really going to work. Now, here's a good truth test for your movie. The whole thing about movies, whether they're digitally distributed or theatrically distributed, is that you've got to get the audience there on the opening day. If it's there on the opening day, then word of mouth goes out, more people come, the theater fills up, you might even be able to hold your screens for more weeks. And if it's digital download or on iTunes or Netflix, if a lot of people start to watch it opening day, it pops up in the recommendation engine, it comes onto your screen first. So here's the truth test. On opening day, you have your audience, you know who your tribe is. You have 2 audience members. Imagine them texting each other. It's Friday at about 3 in the afternoon, and they're texting back and forth and saying, what should we do tonight? Well, what could we do? We could watch a movie. We could stay home and binge watch Narcos on Netflix. We could go out and get drunk. We could stay in and play poker or Scrabble. If you can't convince someone like me that 2 members of your audience will agree that your movie is something they have to do on opening night, then you should go back and make another movie. There has to be that level of urgency and passion for your audience to actually turn out the vote. You know, it's really turning out the vote. Today is election day. Movies are a lot like elections. It's all about election day. It's all about retail sales. It's all about what happens on Black Friday, the way the stores advertise to get you in the door at 4 o'clock in the morning. Or I think Macy's is opening, 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving night, to get you in the door, to create that sense of excitement, those hourly specials. In the same way that retail is so good at creating a sense of excitement, so too movies, even for your little tribe, need to be creating a sense of excitement. Okay, next question. This was written by a person who's lovely, but didn't understand that the sticky part of a note has to be on the other side, so we had to use some tape. And it's a producer question, so just saying. What are the producer's responsibilities on a film, and the difference between the executive producer, if any? Great question. The producer's job really is to hold the entire project in their hands, from the beginning to the end. The producer is the first person on the set of the morning and the last person on the set at the end of the day. The producer is probably the person who incepted the project, who had the first idea for it, or first options in the material, or first connected with the writer, and was there to attach the director and the cast, see it all the way through production, see it all the way through post-production, and then see it through marketing and distribution. The producer's job never ends, and the producer's job is a very long job. You know, we talk about how great it is to be in production, but production is really the very shortest part of the process. There are movies, I see heads nodding, you guys know. There are movies that I have tried to make, and it's taken me 10 years to get them made. And then you shoot for 60 days. And then there's a year and a half in post. So production is this tiny little time slice of the entire process. And producer's job often is just to keep the flame burning, to be the only one over 5 or 10 years to say, yes, we can get this made. Yes, there's a vision. Yes, I actually see that there's a vision, and I'm going to be charismatic, specific, crisp, and articulate to you so you can be motivated to come along on this journey with me when there's no money. There's just this flame, and if the producer ever lets the flame die, the project will die. So largely, that's what the producer's job is. It is a job of holding the energy of the vision and bringing everybody else along on that long march. Executive producers don't take quite as active a role, and often executive producers have a financier position in the movie. It's a good and kind of a textbook distinguishing feature. Now, especially in the independent world, there has been a lot of muddying in the past many years about producer credits. There have been lots of different kinds of producer credits. Sometimes financiers have come in and tried to take a producer credit instead of an executive producer credit because they think that they're going to win an Academy Award, and they want to be up there to be the person who gets the Academy Award because it is the producer who gets the Best Picture Award, not the executive producer. In the past several years, the Producers Guild, of which I'm a member and which is a great organization, has been very good at really delineating exactly who is entitled to the producer credit, the executive producer credit, co-producer, associate producer, All of that is online on the Producers Guild, and those definitions are great in textbook. And if you're a producer and someone comes in and wants to take your producer credit away from you, you should not let them. The Producers Guild also has something now, which is the Producer's Mark, which are the letters PGA that follow the producer. It's only available for the producer credit, and it's a vetting process that the Producers Guild goes through to verify that you have actually done the producer's job. And if you have that verification from the Producers Guild, you can have PGA after your name in the credits, and you do not have to be a member of the Guild to go through that vetting process. Because we believe that producers should be honored whether or not they're Guild members. If you produce enough movies, we want you in the Guild because you're all brothers and sisters and we want you there. Okay, next question. How do you recommend indie filmmakers find our audience? We are experts at story and character, but not necessarily in marketing. Help. Become experts in marketing. I'm sorry, it's your job. Right now, all of us have to be creative entrepreneurs. We really don't have a choice. We don't have studios or other big infrastructures to do that for us. Now, nobody makes a movie alone. Movies are all about collaboration. So if you don't know how to do that, please find somebody who does and make that person a part of your team. It's an essential part of your team. You can't do it without that. And you actually need to start thinking about marketing and finding your audience at the very beginning of the process, well before you even start pre-production, because you won't have the luxury of a lot of money, which will allow you to buy awareness. You have that long period of time where you can, through social media and other kinds of interaction, begin to build awareness slowly. So that's actually what you need to do. Now, taking a step back, and we talked about the creative process, about what writers do and how writers work. It's really great for all of us to be here together. And anybody who's watching on live stream, it's great for you to be here on live stream too. One of the unique things about us as the creative community is that we rarely get together in community. Because our work is often so solitary, it needs to be. We work alone at our laptops and our desktops, or we put ourselves in a protected bubble at a coffee shop while we're working on our scripts or our plans. We work in very isolated ways because our internal creative process needs the safe, sacred, embryonic place for that creativity to be there. It needs to be protected. And then we have to step out into the world and share it. But because we work in such a small and protected way, we don't really realize how many of us there are. There are millions of us. In the United States alone, there are 5.5 million people who make their principal source of income from their creative work. That is more than all the active duty military personnel. It's more than all the doctors. It's more than all the lawyers. We are a gigantic class. And if you add in people who make part of their income from their creative work, you add another 20 or 25 million people in the US alone. So we're actually a gigantic group of people, but because we work in such an isolated way, we're balkanized, and we don't know that we have many people who are in common in our tribe. We actually have a very large tribe. I think it's good to know that because this kind of an event helps to reinforce that. How has your project selection changed with the increasing fragmentation of the industry? Well, it's gotten much more specific. I think that, for me, right now, I don't make movies just to get a movie made. I did that early in my career. I was so excited to be able to get a movie made. There are a couple movies that I made that they're on my resume because I want to remember that I did that, but it's not because they're very good films. Over the course of time, I've realized that it's not really worth it to make a movie just to get it done. It's only worth it because you love it or you really believe it can have an impact. The documentaries that I happen to be working on, I've had a lot of success with documentaries, which I never started to work on until I went to National Geographic, and then we had some early success with documentaries like The Story of the Weeping Camel and March of the Penguins. Since I've left there, a lot of documentaries have come to me. My business model for documentaries now is the only ones I'm working on are those that are funded by nonprofit organizations because they don't want a financial return, they want a social impact return. It's kind of impossible to make an investor's business model case for a documentary. They never, ever make their money back. However, they make spectacular social impact, and they can have huge social impact return. I should qualify that. A very few documentaries do make their money back, but by and large, they don't. And you can't really look an investor in the eye and say, I can pretty much guarantee you're getting your money back, because that is not something you can say on a feature, and especially not on a doc. But I found that as a business model, working with nonprofit organizations who understand that they could take some money to put out their message on the national conversation by buying 3 or 4 30-second spots on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that people will fast forward through or go to the bathroom during and miss. Or they could take that same amount of money and make a really spectacular feature documentary that can then be cut down into a 55-minute television version. And they can use that as a document in the public discourse to frame up the discussion and put forward their point of view. It's a spectacular use of funds. There's really no better way to frame up your argument to the public at large. No better way. It's better than a book, which people aren't going to read. It's better than something that's too short that can't really document the argument. So that's what I've done in terms of the documentary work. You're connected to several animal projects. Are animals a passion of yours? Well, I'm in the movie business. I think animals are really beautiful. We tried to make some animal films after March of the Penguins. They didn't do that well. I'm not sure what the feature audience is for them. So I like animals, but I don't go searching out animal movies, and I'm not producing any at the moment. Okay, moving over. We're going to move over to financing. Let's say that making a film is like solving a jigsaw puzzle. All the pieces are numbered from 1 to 10,000. I have a way of putting all the pieces together starting from number 2 to number 10,000, but who puts in piece number 1? Who puts in the first dollar? And that's kind of related to a couple of other questions, which is, how does one find investors and partners? What's the best strategy you found that works to solidify first-time field investors, brick and mortar wealth? More so, what is the first money in? Do film funds invest in small and low-budget movies? We'll save that for later. And how do we counter that something doesn't sell in foreign markets? Okay, so let's talk about how you put financing together. And let's go all the way back to who's really going to care about your movie. I'm really prejudiced about this. I think your movie has to be either spectacularly good, like so good that it really gets into festivals and gets over-the-top reviews that say, you must see this movie immediately, and it's the only movie you should ever see this year. Or they have to have cast. It has to have one of those two things. And I really am a believer in having cast in your movies. Cast being recognizable cast. There was another question over here, which is, what do producers look for when casting a film? So, which is all related to that. You need to have cast in your movies. And the cast either needs to be the best actors in the universe who have no profile but can become stars, or they have to be stars. That's just it. It's really cut and dry. That is only if you care about having people see your movie. If you're just making the movie for yourselves, it doesn't really matter. But if you care about people seeing your movie, you have to have cast or the most amazing actors. So for people who are not well-known celebrity actors, you're still going to get work, but you're going to work in lower budget pictures, or you're not going to have as big roles. And I'm sorry, that's just the reality of our business, that we all become commodities in the audience's eyes. When you are deciding what you're going to watch on Netflix, what information do you have to make your decision? You have the poster image, the one-sheet image, which has to read as a thumbnail, often which has the actors' faces on it. You have the director's name, the actor's name, and 155 characters, including spaces. That's all you got to tell people what the movie is. So the actors' names actually have a tremendous amount of value. And when we're doing pre-sales and international sales, the actors' names actually add value to the movie, second only to the script and the director's names. So how many people have experimented with doing pre-sales on their movies before? Okay, and do people know what that is? Who doesn't know? How many people don't know what that is? All right, we're going to do a little bit of pre-sales. You can actually, so the question is, how do you put your movie together? And often as independent filmmakers, we try to seek out wealthy individuals or wealthy groups at the beginning of our process to ask them to invest in our movie. The most successful independent producers reverse the process and go to equity investors, high net worth individuals at the very end. Allow me to give you an example. Let's say you're making a $4 million movie. And by the way, if you look at what's at Sundance last year, I'm sure what will be at Sundance this year, in 2016, there will be $4 million movies made with actors that are recognizable in them. So don't tell me you can't get cast. You only can't get cast if your script isn't good enough or the director isn't someone who the actors want to work with. Sad truth to the directors in the audience, and I'm sorry to give tough love tonight. Your job is to make sure the script is as good as it can be, and your job is to get the cast feeling comfortable with you that they will work with you. Actors work with first-time directors all the time if they believe in them. And producers, if your director cannot get the actors that you want, that give you the level of casting, that will give you the level of financing, you have to fire the director and replace that director with a director whom the actors will feel comfortable with. And I'm sorry, that's just it. The director's job is 90% to get casting. So when we are putting together an independent film, generally what we do is try to pre-sell the movie. We'll go to an international sales agent, show them the script, the director, and the cast. The sales agent might say to us, that's great, but the cast isn't really good enough to sell. Go back and get some better cast. And finally, we've put together a package with a director, a script that really works, and at least a couple of members of the cast that have some profile. And now the sales agent is going to do a set of estimates where they believe they can pre-sell the rights for distribution in that movie in different countries around the world. $1.5 million in the UK, $800,000 in Germany, $25,000 in Spain, and so it goes. And what we really look to do is see how much of the budget we believe we can get from the rest of the world. And then we will actually ask the sales agent to go out and test their estimates to see if they're accurate by selling a couple of those territories. If they can't do it, then we know the estimates were bullshit. If they can do it, then we know those estimates are valid. And now, with those sales done and with those estimates in hand, we can go to a bank, and the bank will loan us money on the contracts that are already done with the sales that were consummated and on the estimates that the international sales company has made. And then we're going to go shoot it someplace where we get a tax incentive of between 25 and 30%. So if you think about this pie again, we're going to do pies and quarters, another theme, and perhaps a suggestion for dessert after the evening. We try to get 25% in international sales, 25% in bank loans, 25% in tax incentives or subsidies, and now there's a last quarter. Now we go to our investors. So instead of going to an investor with a $4 million movie and saying, hey, I've got a great $4 million movie, do you have $4 million? What you get to say is, hey, I've got a great $4 million movie. We've already got $3 million. Do you want to come in for the last $1 million? And they say, wow, I get to put in $1 million and be part of a $4 million movie? What a great deal. So that's the cycle. And it's the reverse of what independent filmmakers usually do, which is just go try to find money. Instead, what you have to do is find value. Find valuable script, a great script, find a great director, and find amazing cast, and then all those other pieces fall into place. A note on the banks. Banks are kind of what help independent filmmaking roll and cash flow, because banks will not only lend against international sales estimates, they will also lend against your tax incentives and subsidies, so you have the cash in hand to cash flow your production. And the time for you to find a banking relationship is right now, before you actually need the bank. Go out, meet the bankers who do this, get to know them, let them feel comfortable with you, find out from them what they need to see to approve loans, because bank loans are fabulous. When a bank loan is paid off, they're gone. They no longer have an equity stake in your movie. So if we were to now take these examples again, if you have a $4 million movie and you go to an investor and she puts in $4 million, she has 100% of the equity in your movie. And she's going to give you a little trickle of that at the end, maybe 50% after she gets back 120% of her money. But if you have a bank who's now lending you half the budget and the investor's only putting in $1 million on a $4 million movie, well, now that investor only has a 25% equity stake, not 100% equity stake. And who has the rest of the equity? You do, the producer. That's really good business for you. It's how you continue to pay the rent as a producer. Okay. Do film funds invest in small, low-budget indies, or is it more for tentpoles? They actually invest in both. There are different kinds of film funds. When I was just up at the Toronto Film Festival, I met with a number of film funds that were really looking to invest in smaller films, and they were actually looking to invest in slates of smaller films because they understood that any single film can tank, but if you invest in a portfolio of films, then you have a much greater likelihood of achieving success. In the same way, if you invest in the stock market, you're not just going to buy Microsoft. You're going to buy a portfolio of 20 different stocks to average out the gains and the losses over time. Many of the film funds that invest with independent films and invest at the smaller budget range are really interested in what your package is and where you're going to shoot and how those tax subsidies work. And often they will also help you cash flow your subsidies. So the answer is yes, you can do that. Obviously, studios finance their tentpole films with gigantic billion-dollar film funds, but that's not what we're all talking about here today. How do you counter the idea that comedy doesn't sell in foreign markets? So obviously written by somebody who's explored foreign markets and has thought about pre-sales. The answer is, if you can't pre-sell, you have to make your movie for less. It also means that you may want to think about your casting and the jurisdiction of your movie. For example, if you cast a UK national or an EU national, you may be able to pick up some specific pre-sales in the country where that person is from. And if they're good casting, it's a great thing to do. As you guys all know, there are a lot of Australian, British, Irish, and Welsh actors who have mastered the American dialect and whom general audiences just think that they're American, but of course they're not. And the fact that they come from other countries means that they may have audiences well developed in other countries. The other thing is that you may find that people are stars in other countries that are not stars here. For example, some of the actors on TV series are bigger stars in China than Brad Pitt, because the number of people who watch American TV series in China exceeds the population of the United States. So you can sometimes find really good casting in well-regarded television series that have traveled internationally, and that can be the kind of casting that puts you over the top. Okay. Okay, this is a good question. We're going to take a break from film because I like this question, especially since my publisher is here in the front row. Why is your book so ridiculously expensive? Okay, so we got to come clean. There's two books. There's a small book. Erica's going to out herself because they thought, this is my publisher, Erica Gutierrez, who's here. All right, so this book, this is a small book, Inside Track for Independent Filmmakers. It's not expensive. It's about $20. You can afford that. This other book, which just came out about 3 weeks ago, Filmmaking in Action, is really expensive, but it's not a book. And I'll tell you why it's as expensive as it is, and why if you are into making film, it's great for you. When Erica and her team came to me and my co-authors about 4 years ago and said, there's no great book at the university level for filmmaking students. We said, really? And we looked at the field, we realized there is nothing that had been written in the past 10 years, and nothing that really understands digital technology and the way we all work today. And in fact, most of the books had been written by people who had not made a lot of movies. we set out to write the very best resource that we could possibly write. And we went to every trade organization, asked them, would you help us do this? Will you give us your expertise and your support? Every one of them said, we've been waiting for you. We've been waiting for someone to come along and give us a vessel into which we could pour all of the knowledge that we've built up from all of our members. And so this project developed with the support of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the people who give you the Oscars, the Directors Guild, the Writers Guild, the Editors Guild, the Visual Effects Society, the American Society of Cinematographers, the Pre-Visualization Society, the Producers Guild. And we were really humbled, and we got to work. And they gave us their experts and their archives. And over the course of time, we created a really amazing resource about how do you make a movie. From how do I have an idea, to write the script, to directing, producing, editing, camera, lighting, sound, visual effects, animation, all the way through marketing, distribution, and how do I have a career in the motion picture business, which we'll get to over here on this board. And we also shot 21 videos that are included as part of the digital ecosystem of this project, which have Academy Award winners like the editor Billy Goldenberg, or the cinematographer Russell Carpenter, who shot Titanic and shot Ant-Man, and independent filmmakers who are at the beginnings of their careers, just like you, who have all made movies, including some that I've distributed, just talking about their stories and how their stories apply to you. It's a really amazing resource. Now, and like, not to hide the price is about $125. It is ridiculously expensive for a book, but if you don't think about it like a book, if you think about it like a resource for how to make movies and how do you take the distilled knowledge of about 100 years of filmmaking experts and have it all in your hands and at your disposal, and you compare it to the cost, the amount of money that you spend on workshops and seminars and trying to go grab people for coffee or dinner or lectures or online courses, you compare it to that, I think it's a really extraordinary deal. And I invite you to check it out. Now, there is this really crazy thing that I've learned about the academic market, because it was designed for universities, but it's really good for independent filmmakers. One of the things that I've learned is that the academic market is so regulated that they have to sell it in pieces. So there's a version of it without the digital ecosystem, a version of it with the digital ecosystem, and they cost exactly the same. And if you press the wrong button on Amazon, you won't get the videos, and you're going to be really angry at me. So if you go to my website, adamleipzig.com, the author section, it will send you to the small book, which is super affordable, the other book, which is really expensive as a book, but super affordable as an education resource. It will send you to exactly the right link on Amazon, so you get the thing that you're looking for. And I hope you're okay with that question. Okay. How do you suggest handling discontent and unrest on the set? It depends who's being discontented and unrestful. You know, sometimes you've got to talk about it, and sometimes you can't talk about it. Part of the way, but there are certain things that I do as a producer to try to minimize the potential for discord on the set at the beginning of the process, in pre-production, and in selecting the team, so it happens less frequently. First, I'm very careful about who the team is, and I really think carefully about who will work well together. Now, sometimes I actually make choices of who's going to work together where I know there's going to be some friction, because I think sometimes a little bit of creative friction is a good thing. Directors don't always need to be surrounded by people who say yes. Sometimes they need to be surrounded by people who say, try something else. It's not good enough. So those, particularly, for example, in the relationship between the director and the cinematographer, it's good if they see the same thing, and it's also good if the cinematographer can be strong enough to say, hey, here's a better way to tell the story with the shot, and the director feels secure enough to listen to that and respects the cinematographer enough to do that. So it's building the team, and then it's also making sure that people have their needs met. For example, I really care about who is doing hair and makeup, because that relationship between the hair and makeup artist and the actor in the hour or two before the actor comes out of the trailer and goes onto the set makes all the difference in the world about how secure the actor feels, how calm. The relationship between a hair and makeup artist and an actor is almost like a priest. It's like, you know, we have someone who does this, right? You know everything, you share nothing. You're a therapist, right? And all the therapy comes out. And if there's a hair and makeup artist that the actor really wants to work with, you say yes, even if it breaks your budget, because that makes the actor feel really good. I also like to involve people in everything. Some of the best actors that I've ever worked with, especially female actors, know exactly how they're supposed to be lit, and they'll walk onto the set and say, no, take that light out. I want to be lit from this side. And they know how they're supposed to look. They know exactly how the audience expects them to be, and you do that because then they know that they're going to be shot well. Because really, when they're in the middle of acting a scene, they don't want to think about all those things. They just want to be able to be in the scene. So you really try to create that ecosystem. I think that being a producer is creating a really good nutritive environment in which creative people can do their best work. So you try to do that. And when there's discord, sometimes you have to deal with it. Sometimes you have to be the discordant one. Sometimes you have to say, you have to go take another shot because that take wasn't good enough. And sometimes you have to say, I'm sorry, but you got to come out of the trailer. You have to be the strong one and do that, and you have to take the hits. So I think the answer is there's no one way to deal with discord on the set. Discord will happen. There's also a shift in power over the course of a movie, particularly a movie with stars in the cast. When a movie begins, the director has a tremendous amount of power, and starting on the second day of photography, the director begins to lose power. Sorry, directors. Lose power, and the power transfers to the principal actor until by the end of the shoot, the principal actor has all the power. Because somewhere in the middle of the shoot, you could actually fire the director, but you would never fire the cast. And the actors know that. So you have to be mindful of that power dynamic as it's going. And I don't know how that helps, but it's something that I've observed. How do you see drones fitting into the production landscape in the future? They're fabulous. On the doc I'm making now, we have $500,000 shots that are made with a $500 drone and a GoPro camera, and they're fabulous. They're so good. So yes, drones are great. You should all have your drones, and you should use them on every show. They're fantastic because you get the equivalent of crane shots. I love crane shots where you just swoop up or come down, and we just have great drone shots, and I love them. How do you choose your music? What sources do you use? You know, in post-production, next to the editor, the composer is the most important person in the creative team. I really like to work with great composers, which doesn't mean that they're famous composers, but it means that they're really good composers. And I've had the pleasure of working with very famous composers and with composers at other stages of their careers or other stages of name recognition. I listen to their music. I have to like their music, and my prejudice is I'm a music theme guy. I don't like scores that are just like zzz, you know, that like atmospheric mechanical hum that so many movies have now. For me, that doesn't do it. I really like themes because there's something that happens in the brain chemistry when you hear a musical theme and then it transforms and then it comes back at a key scene. It has this other layer of emotional narrative to the film that I personally resonate with and that I appreciate. So I listen to the composer's music. Then I share the film in a rough cut, which generally has temp music on it, with the composer, talk with the composer and get her thoughts, and just see if there's a great relationship there. Generally, I tell composers I'm not looking for what's expected. Generally, the temp score is exactly what's expected. It's because the editor was just putting in some music to help the movie along. And generally, my instructions to the composer are, surprise me. If it's terrible, we'll throw it away, but push yourself. And if it's a kind of score that we expect to hear in this movie, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for something else. I really always try to push people to greatness because, you know, I would rather fail going for something extraordinary than do something average and mediocre. And if you tell that to everybody on the team, then everybody will push themselves to do that. When I was in my theater career, I produced the first plays that Robert Altman directed. There was a point when he got tired of movies for a little bit. He decided he wanted to go into theater. And at that point, I was the production stage manager, prop maker, dramaturg, box office ticket taker, and general factotum of the theater. It was a play that Frank South had written, and the last moment of the play had a special effect where the actor got up onto a scaffolding and then drops and hangs himself. And of course, there's a light cue that's very fast, and what drops down is a dummy, obviously, because we didn't kill an actor every night. So Bob was in rehearsal, surrounded always by a haze. Just like a haze. You would just like get high, being within 6 feet of him. And I brought up this dummy that we had made, and Bob, I lay it down on the floor in the lobby, and Bob comes out of rehearsal. The haze precedes him, and he looks up and he looks it down, and he just looks at me and he says, "That's adequate." He turns around. He goes back into rehearsal. Now, I felt awful because this is Robert Altman, who directed Three Women and McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and you don't want adequate for Bob. What you want is fantastic, right? So I looked at it, and I realized that the cowboy boots could have been aged down a little bit more, and the button could have been torn off the top the way the actor had it in his costume. So I took it downstairs, fixed it up, and the next day I brought it back up to the lobby. We call Bob out of rehearsal. He comes out of rehearsal, and he looks it up and down. He looks at me, and he says, "That's adequate." And now I'm really freaking out, because now I failed Bob Altman twice. This is terrible. So I go back downstairs, and we do more things. So we make the wig better and the skin tone better, and we put a ring on the hand, do all these other little details that make it really match the actor. Bring it up the next day. He looks it up. He looks it down. And he just looks at me, and he says, "It's adequate, but you can stop working on it now." Now, later I talked to people who worked with Bob on all of his movies, and they told me that the highest praise Bob ever gave anything was, "That's adequate." And I think he did that because he knew how it made people feel, and it made them push themselves to do much more than adequate. That was a lesson that I learned early on. So I don't use his words, but I do really push people to try to achieve more. Okay, we're now into distribution questions, then we're getting to career. How is online distribution changing the internet? How is online user content affecting the industry? Do you recommend using online sources to get your work noticed as an independent film? Let's take that last one first. Yes. What else do you have? I mean, really, you're not going to go buy commercials on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You have to use online sources. It's the only thing you have. Now, there's this really interesting thing about online sources and social media in general. There is an inverse relationship between how many people you can reach and how effective it is. In other words, right now, we are very effective because we're all in person. Or if you take one person to coffee, it's a very effective, persuasive thing. If you made a phone call, it's a little less persuasive. If you send someone an email, it's a little less persuasive. Post it on Facebook, efficacy goes down. Post it on Twitter. I've had tweets about my book that theoretically reached 1 million people. It had 1 million views. It didn't sell any books. Because when you're reaching that many people, it flies by so fast. It's so opportunistic. If you're not looking at that feed at that exact second, you're never going to see it again. It's just the Snapchatization of massive social media. So it's all about choosing your social media wisely and figuring out where your tribe actually goes for their social media information. So yes, and you should start it early. In fact, those of you who are making movies, start it now, even before you get your financing, because you want to start engaging your audience now. You want to have a core of evangelists who care a lot about what you're doing, so they can become the people who go out and promulgate your word. So how is online distribution changing the business? It's changed the business already. Changed the business 10 years ago. And it is the primary way that independent films find their audiences. I still believe in theatrical distribution for some movies. And one of the things that theatrical distribution does, even if you only distribute in a theater in New York and a theater in Los Angeles for 1 week, is you will get reviews. Those reviews are credibility for your movie, and they're actually part of your marketing campaign. And then most of your audience is going to see it in some form of digital distribution, both domestically and internationally. And you should actually have a digital strategy going in. So that's how I would answer that question. It's like you should, and part of it is you also want to think about how you shoot and how you frame your shots for that audience. Because if all you're doing are David Lean, Lawrence of Arabia wide shots, where there's a gigantic screen and a tiny little camel, and that's your entire movie, it's not going to work that well in the digital ecosystem. So we actually have to think about our aspect ratio and the way we frame our shots and the way we deliver it for maximum impact to those audiences. So I've made a movie. I've gone to festivals. I've won some awards. Now what? Well, you should have thought about that before. Because, and you should all, and having a festival strategy is part of your general distribution strategy. Now you have to just keep working at it. Maybe the festivals were a platform where distributors might have seen your movie. And when I say distributors, I mean both digital distributors or theatrical distributors. And they may have offered you a distribution deal. If that's the case, my advice is take it. You're not going to get very much money for it. Unfortunately, it's a buyer's market now because, as I said before, there's 10,000 movies made a year. There's 10% of those that ever get any kind of distribution. And so distributors can really pick and choose and can buy a movie that was made for $5 million for $50,000, $100,000. But you should take it because you're going to get your movie distributed unless you actually want to go into the distribution business. In which case, and I know some filmmakers who have done this very successfully, they've just said, I made the movie, but I realized that was only half my job. The other half of my job is to go sell it. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to work with Gather or Tug, or I'm going to book my own screenings, or I'm going to go figure out my own platform, and I'm going to go to an aggregator like Gravitas and go get a digital distribution deal, and I'm going to do all the digital delivery. And then I'm going to make sure that I have a marketing plan, because when you make these deals with both theatrical distributors and also digital distributors, what they want to know is who's going to see your movie and how are you going to reach them? And this is actually one of the places where crowdfunding comes in to focus, because if you crowdfunded for your movie at the beginning, it's really nice that you got money, but money was the happy side effect of crowdfunding. What crowdfunding is really about is finding your audience early on as investors spiritually, not investors financially. And if you've maintained a good relationship with those people, they can become your core evangelists who will go out and spread the word because they put $5 or $10 or $25 into your picture, and they're going to want to see that there was some return on it, that their friends like it, and they can say, I was part of this movie. One of the things that independent distributors actually look at now is how big is your social media following when you walk in the door, and how many people contributed to your crowdfunding campaign. And if they are choosing between one movie that has no social media and didn't crowdfund, and another one that has 5,000 followers on Instagram and 150 people on Twitter, and 650 people who contributed to their crowdfunding campaign, they're going with that one because they already know they can reach about 10,000 people. And that's why we start thinking about this stuff as early as possible. Okay. What has been your greatest failure, and what did you learn from it? When I was an executive at Disney, there were these people who brought me the script. And it was about these guys with funny Italian names, and they wore turtle costumes. I, and we were Disney, and we, we had animated animals, but I just didn't get it. And then they made this movie, and they came in and they showed it to us, and I thought it was really bad. and I passed. I said, don't really get it. And then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they were going to release it, and we started looking at the marketing and the tracking, and it was tracking really well. So Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was running Disney at the time and became my mentor, tried to offer them money for the movie, and they wouldn't sell it. And then it was tracking so well, we said, well, maybe we can just buy the company. So we actually made an offer to buy New Line. They wouldn't sell. So passing on that movie, when you look at what that movie did and all its extensions and what New Line did later, it was kind of like $1 billion mistake. And I think what I've learned from that is that not too many people can say they made $1 billion mistake, but I have lived to tell the tale, and I've survived. I learned that it's okay to make $1 billion mistake, and that I'm not right all the time. And I'm actually, I've also gotten to the point where, the movies that I've made, I feel really proud of, sometimes I'm proud of them, movies that made money, but I'm not proud of them because they made money. I'm proud of them because I think they're really good films. And sort of, and that's what motivates me, which dovetails into this question, which is, why do you do what you do? I really like working with artists. I love working with creative people. Earlier in my life, when I was in theater, I tried to direct something. I discovered I don't have a director's chip in my head, but I am a natural producer. I love creating that ecosystem in which creative people can thrive, and I have a sixth sense of intuiting what they may need before they know that they need it, and making sure that it's there for them, which rarely is actually money, but it's often time or the right collaborations or support, encouragement, love, belief in their vision, telling them the truth. So I do that because it just really thrills me. And when that's happening, when all of those things are working as a beautiful human engine, it just feels really happy. So I do it because it makes me happy. New York or LA? Only 20% of the jobs in film and media are in New York or LA. The other 80% are everywhere else. I was just in Atlanta. You can't get studio space in Atlanta or Savannah. So New York or LA, wherever you like, and both. And I know people who sold their houses in LA and bought motorhomes so they could drive and live to wherever the movies were being shot. These are mainly people who work below the line. And then California got its tax incentive back, and production started, and they came on back to California. We live in a nomadic business. We're gypsies. We never are in one place for very long. I've been involved in 30 movies. We've shot 3 in Los Angeles. The other 27 have been shot everywhere from Antarctica to Pittsburgh. So I don't know. How many people have lived in LA in this audience? How many people are thinking about living in LA? Come on out. If you really want a lot of work and you're in the film or media space and you just want a lot of work right now, figure out what candidate you like, because in 1 year there will be an election, and between now and then the two parties are going to spend $4 billion in making media. So they're going to be hiring a lot of people. And you won't make your movie, but you will get a lot of experience. What is the best way to keep in touch with the connections that you've made? I think everybody finds their own way. I also think that we always have to keep making more connections than the connections we have. This is particularly true with creative people when we're looking for work, because and people say you reach out to your network. sometimes your network will hire you, but almost always, if you haven't been hired, it's because the people in your network aren't going to hire you. Because if they were going to hire you, you would have been hired already. They are the people who already know you. So you actually have to get out of your network and continually expand it. I know it doesn't look like it because I'm standing on stage in front of you with a microphone. I'm very introverted. It's very uncomfortable for me to do this and to do this networking thing. I have a definition of networking. Networking is, you know you're networking when you stand in a room with people you don't know and you feel incredibly uncomfortable. Then you're networking. But you kind of have to do that and come to events like this and then just continue those connections. But you know, at the end of the day, how many deep connections do we ever have? And some of my most fruitful collaborations actually, interestingly, go back to my theater days. There's a playwright whose work I produced for 30 years, and we just like each other, and I get his work, and we just see each other, and we do it over and over again. So it may be that there are people that you just continually work with. David Gordon Green, the director, who actually shot a video for this project, Filmmaking in Action, talks about how the people he met in college are the people he still makes his movies with, and they all go along with him. So sometimes you can find really nice collaborative teams that just travel like schools of fish all the way through the business. Are there any last questions? I'll do this one last. Anything else before we wrap up? The instruction with these sticky notes were, I don't want anybody to leave here feeling like they didn't get their question answered. So I want to make sure we've addressed people's needs. Rachel, you have to come speak into the mic. Yes, I remember your name. Come here.
You keep talking about getting cast. How exactly do you do that?
Fabulous question. That's something that people ask all the time because they say, how do we get through the agents? How do we get through the gatekeepers? First, the agents are not your enemies, because if you take on the position that the agent is your enemy, and you have an antagonistic relationship with the actor's representative, the actor's rep will shut you down and keep you ever from walking through the gate. So the agents are your friends. Now, the agents have a certain motivation. Their motivation is to make money for themselves and for their clients and themselves. And unfortunately, your script is not going to come to them with a $20 million wire transfer instruction, bound into the first page. But most actors that I know love to work on independent films because it stretches them as artists. And many well-known actors have this business model of one for them, one for me, one for them, one for me. So the first thing you need is extraordinarily good material. Really, really good script. And if it has some provenance beyond just a script, it's based on a great book, or it's based on something that happened, or something that has some awareness or note, even better, because it's just an easier way to get people's attention when you're talking about it. You have to have a really good script. Better than you think. It's not that good yet, really. Your scripts are not that good. You have to make them better. Studios, when I was running National Geographic, we got 15,000 scripts a year. Studios get 25,000 scripts a year. And they might make 3 or 4 that are not from their internal development. Your script has to be so good to rise to the top. So you have to get out of your own way and stop believing that your stuff is fabulous. Give it to people who will be honest and open and tough with you and make it better. So now, let's assume you've done that. Now you have a really good script. You just start calling around, and you can reach cast through their agents, through their managers, through their lawyers, through other producers who have worked with them. One technique that you can use is to reach out to a producer whose work you really like, who has worked with the actor that you are targeting, and say, hey, I have a great script for this person. Do you want to see if you can get it to them? And if that person delivers that actor to you, they will become a producer on your project, and they will have earned it because they delivered you the piece of casting that got your movie made. And it could be that that's a more experienced producer than you are, who could become your mentor and could actually be a really good collaborator for you. Or not. You have to, you have to make sure that there's a good vibe and they're in it for the right reasons. Agents, managers generally will not take scripts from directors and writers unsolicited, but they will take scripts from producers. And they will take scripts generally from attorneys. So you can also have an attorney represent you to bring that script into those organizations. And then if you have an actor will never say yes based on a script. The most they will ever say is, who's directing? And then it's your job to make sure that you have the right director. The director has fabulous initial material, even if it's just a short, but it had to be a rock solid short. Then the director's got to get in the room with the actor. And it will all come down to that meeting where the director is going to go to the actor wherever the actor is, because you treat actors like royalty, which they are. We don't have royalty in America, we have celebrity. You go to the actor, and the director will either have a good meeting or a bad meeting. And if the director has a good meeting, you have a movie. So that's how you do it. And it's not about money, because the actors know that they're not making money with you. They will take a substantial piece of the back end. That's fine. It's worth it. But you're not going to have to pay them up front. And the fact that they're in your movie is what's going to allow you to do pre-sales and get distribution and get other cast involved. Because once one significant actor is in, other actors will follow. Okay. Anything else? Last question. What is Creative Future? This is the something that Jen didn't get to because I have too many things in my bio. I'm sorry. Creative Future, I'm the COO of Creative Future. It's a non-profit organization which advocates for the creative community. We believe that the creative community needs to be supported. And because there are so many of us, but because we work so individually, in general, the creative community doesn't know how big we are. We work to try to stand for the creative community in the public discussion and also in the legislative agenda. We have 450 companies and organizations in our membership. We have 60,000 people like you in our membership. Membership is free. I would encourage you and ask you all, if you enjoyed the conversation today, to thank me by signing up at creativefuture.org. We believe that creative people need to be supported, deserve to lead sustainable lives, deserve to have great information, deserve to be able to decide how, when, and where their work is shared. Part of what we do is fight hard for intellectual property rights and for copyright. There are many forces, including Silicon Valley forces, that do not believe in copyright and would like to denature or destroy the copyright laws, which means that they would like to take our jobs away because basically they think that our work should be given away for free. We work heavily against piracy sites that pirate our works and take money out of our pockets, out of your pockets, because what we do is not a hobby. What we do is a craft and a profession, and we're all part of this very big tribe which often is not able to speak with a single voice. One of the great things about coming here today, and Jen, thanks so much for inviting me here, and what a great honor to close out the series, is to be able to come and talk with all of you and hear your voices, to share mine with yours. Thank you so much. Make beautiful movies.
Thank you, sir. That was just lovely. I loved every word. Loved every word. So just in case, don't get, I mean, that would be horrible, a horrible way to go out. So if there's anything at all that you heard during the course of this discussion, you didn't quite know what that is, there's this thing called Google. You can find out like what it was. And if you don't remember what it was, it's totally fine, because livestream.com has every single event from this entire series hanging out on livestream.com. Just pop in Film Interchange and sign up for the Film Interchange newsletter, because I'm going to be resubmitting everything going out 1 week at a time, and you're going to get those videos as well. Adam, this was fantastic. Oh, also adamleipzig.com. If you haven't checked out his website specifically, go get his books and go make your movies. And that's it. Great. Woo-hoo.